Happy Monday. I'm Vicky Nguyen.
I'm Morgan Bradford. Thank you so much for joining us. NBC News Daily starts right now.
Today is Monday, September 12th. Royal escort. The children of Queen Elizabeth II attend a service in Scottish Parliament to honor the life of their mother. Her journey to her final resting place in London is underway right now.
Russian retreat. Ukrainian forces claim to be making huge gains, driving Russian troops from occupied regions in the northeast. We'll have the very latest straight ahead.
Court fight. Lawyers for President Trump argue in a new filing that some of the documents seized in the Mar-a-Lago raid may not be classified. We will have the details.
And Iron Man Tom Brady breaks another record as he kicks off the season, becoming the oldest quarterback to ever start a game.
Welcome to NBC News Daily. Thank you so much for being here with us. We start with the first of many funeral services being held in honor of Queen Elizabeth II.
That's right. Right now, a service of thanksgiving in St. Giles Cathedral in Scotland. The Queen's coffin led a procession from a royal residence to the cathedral. King Charles III, along with his siblings, walked behind their mother's coffin as it made its way to that church.
NBC News foreign correspondent Kelly Kobiea joins us now from Edinburgh. Kelly, thousands crowded the Royal Mile to see the late Queen's hearse. Speak to us about what this moment means to the Scottish people. There was such a deep connection between the Queen and Scotland, and they loved her.
Oh, that's so true, Vicky and Morgan. This really is a time for Scotland to pay their respects to the Queen. She spent so much of her time here. She loved Balmoral. It was her happy place, the place where she felt relaxed, where she could just enjoy her family, enjoy the outdoors. And people who live in that area specifically felt like she was their neighbor. So they feel like not only did they lose a monarch and a matriarch, but also sort of a friend in a way. And people throughout Scotland are now coming together, remembering the Queen today. So many people packed the streets along that procession. It's only about a mile-long stretch along what is called the Royal Mile here in Edinburgh, a very narrow street, and we were there earlier today, just before the procession was about to start, and we talked to people about why they were there. I mean, there were people who told us, we can't see anything, we're not going to get a view of the procession, but we felt it was just so important to be here today, in part to pay their respects, to honor the Queen, but also to witness an extraordinary moment in time. Take a look, listen to what one woman told me about why she brought her young son here.
Why was it important to you to come?
Well, she was so special.
It's part of history, isn't it? We wanted to bring him because when he goes to school, he'll be learning in history all about what we're witnessing today.
You can tell him you were here, and he was here.
Yeah.
And he's just a little guy, about 2 years old, so you can't really understand what's happening around him. But in 5 years' time, his mom can tell him, we were there when King Charles walked behind his mother's coffin to the cathedral at St. Giles. And at this moment, guys, the procession is, of course, over, but people are finally lining up and getting ready to go in and file past the coffin that the Queen's viewing is finally open to the public, really the first chance to walk by and pay their quiet respects. And that'll continue for about the next 24 hours.
And Kelly, you mentioned sort of the first chance, but one of the ceremonies is called, as you mentioned, a service of thanksgiving. But why is that? I mean, what exactly happens there? Just walk us through that ceremony, if you can, briefly.
Yeah, so the service of Thanksgiving is really to give thanks to the Queen for her life of service, for her life of duty and sacrifice to the country. So we saw prayers, hymns, some Bible readings, and some other readings. And this is something that very much reflected the Queen. She was a very devout woman. She leaned heavily on her Christian faith. She was a regular churchgoer. So this was really a way to give thanks to her service. And in that church were dignitaries, but also members of charities who she supported.
All right, NBC News foreign correspondent Kelly Kobiea for us there overseas. Kelly, thank you so much.
Morgan, let's stay overseas now. Russian forces are retreating from a key region in northeast Ukraine. The recapturing of territory on the 200th day of this war could signal a significant turning point for Ukraine and its defense against Moscow's attacks. NBC News foreign correspondent Megan Fitzgerald is tracking it all for us, and she joins us live now from Kyiv. Megan, how exactly is Ukraine pushing out Russian forces in this region? And they just got a big influx of cash from the U.S.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Vicky, there's a couple of things at play here. One of them is strategy. We know that 2 weeks ago, or a little bit before then, the Ukrainians were talking about this counteroffensive, launching it in the southern region of the country, in the Kherson region. Now, this is the area that we saw the Russians seize quickly on in this invasion. But then we saw the rush the front lines in the northeastern part of the country, in the Kharkiv region, where we have seen, even just within the last couple of days here, really shocking and significant advancements, where the president has said that they've been able to recapture some 30 settlements in the area. To give some perspective on this number that we've been hearing, the more than 1,300 square miles of land, the UK Foreign Defence Ministry has put it into context, saying that it's more than twice the size of Greater London that these Ukrainian soldiers have been able to take back. And then, of course, as you quickly mentioned, the fact that they've been getting a lot of support from the United States and Western countries. They've used those weapons to reach beyond the front line. So it's a combination of all these things working in Ukraine's favor, Vicky.
Certainly critical for Ukraine to regain back this ground. We see those flags being raised, those soldiers triumphant. Do we expect Russia, Megan, to intensify its response?
Absolutely. You know, that's certainly something that we're keeping a close eye on. I mean, just within the last 24 hours, we saw Russian missile strikes on critical infrastructure here in Ukraine, knocking out power to millions of people from the Kharkiv region in the northeast to the Donetsk region in the east to Zaporizhia, where that power plant is. And so the concern is that the Russians are trying to target this infrastructure as we head into the winter months. We know it's incredibly cold here in the winter, and so that is the fear, that they will continue to target these strategic places, leaving people without heat, without electricity, and without water, Vicky.
NBC News foreign correspondent Megan Fitzgerald in Kyiv for us today. Thank you, Megan.
Vicki, I want to go to bring in NBC News international affairs analyst Michael McFaul. He's also the former U.S. ambassador to Russia. Thank you so much, Ambassador McFaul, for joining us this Monday. I have to ask, just big picture here, what does this recapturing of territory tell us? Does it ultimately say more about the power of Ukrainian forces, or does it tell us a little bit about the breakdown of the Russian military?
You know, I think it's a combination of both. I think this is the second biggest victory for the Ukrainian military since Putin invaded Ukraine. The first was the Battle of Kiev. If you recall, the Russians tried to take the capital and they were thwarted. This is now the second biggest victory. Remember, Kharkiv is the second largest city in Ukraine. It's been under attack for most of this war. Large parts of the region around Kharkiv have been under Russian rule for 4 months, and now they're running, literally running back to the Russian border. It's a big victory for Ukraine. Doesn't mean the war's over, but this is a big victory for the Ukrainian forces. You
know, I was so struck, Ambassador, by that letter that local Russian leader sent to Putin, essentially asking him to stand down. The letter it basically said, look, you had a few good ideas in the beginning, but you've completely spoiled this war. You haven't done a good job. And this is in a country where speaking out against the government can put you in jail. So that was a risky move. What does the fact that they even wrote that letter and ultimately where we are now looking at the recapture of this territory say about not only Putin's power, but even his control over his own military?
Well, it was a brave act to write that letter. If you use the word war publicly in Russia, you can go to jail right now. That's how tight it is. Putin has cracked down. Russia is a much greater, more oppressive dictatorship today than just a year ago because of the war. And yet, I think we're beginning to see in public what a lot of Russians, including those that support Putin, by the way, have been saying behind closed doors. In fact, on Russian television, state-controlled television, you're now seeing open debates about the failures of this war. Nobody's criticizing Putin directly like that letter is. They're all saying he's the good czar, right? It's his advisors around him, but that they're debating it on national television, right. Kremlin-controlled television, suggests that people are beginning to wonder, what is the point of this war?
And the tide is turning. The question is, could this be the beginning of the end? NBC News International Affairs analyst Michael McFaul. Thank you so much, Mr. McFaul. We appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, well, credit card companies will now track sales at gun stores.
That's right. Visa, American Express, even others, they're going to apply a new merchant code. And that's after pressure from gun control activists say that this could actually help track weapons purchases. For more on that and more, we're bringing in NBC senior markets correspondent Dominic Chu joining us now for our Money Minute. Dom, tell us a little bit more.
So, Morgan, Vicky, that new code that you just referenced will show where money is being spent, but not exactly identify what was purchased. So the credit card processors say they want to make sure that legal purchases of things like firearms and ammunition are privacy protected. Now, that's going to be something to watch because this will be a big development with regard to that, how we track how things are purchased and who knows what. Also in the news right now, the U.S. workforce has been reduced by 500,000 people due to illnesses related to COVID-19. That's according to a study by 2 academic economists. That does not include the millions of people who stopped working because they retired, didn't have childcare, or were afraid of catching the virus itself. And Walt Disney Company is revealing plans for new attractions at its theme parks, including a Tron light cycle run at Disney World and a new villain, King Thanos, will be coming to Disneyland as well. The company says this version of Thanos won, and parkgoers will be able to join the Avengers as they fight back against the victorious King Thanos. So an interesting move, all coming from that D23 Expo, ladies, where Disney unveiled some of their new wares and their new attractions. So we'll see how that plays with consumers, guys.
I've got 3 little kids who'll be watching that closely. CNBC senior markets correspondent Dominic Chu, thank you.
And coming up, we're going to dive into the growing legal battle over the thousands of pages of documents seized from former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. We'll tell you what both sides are arguing today. You're watching NBC News Daily. Now to the escalating legal battle over the documents seized from former president's Florida home last month. Now today, Trump's legal team is opposing the DOJ's motion for a federal judge to issue a partial stay on the ruling to grant the so-called special master. NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delaney joins us now live from Washington, D.C. Ken, it's good to see you this Monday. First off, what exactly are both sides arguing here?
Good afternoon, Morgan. Well, the Trump team today responded to the DOJ's appeal. Remember that the DOJ asked the judge to set aside the part of her order that forbids them from using the documents in their investigation. Specifically, they said, we want the 100 classified documents that we seized at Mar-a-Lago. The special master can review the rest of them, thousands and thousands of Trump documents, but we think that these 100 classified documents should go to the FBI right away because we're doing a damage assessment, the Justice Department is saying, and because of the judge's order, they've paused the damage assessment. Well, today the Trump team said that this is essentially a document storage dispute that has gone way off the rails and that the government is trying to criminalize what they refer to as a routine dispute between a president and the archives. And they're sort of setting aside this issue of classification. What they're saying is they're calling these records allegedly classified. They're not saying that Trump declassified the records, but they're saying that the president had the authority to do that. The government has to prove they're classified. Just because they have markings doesn't mean they're classified. So they are rejecting, the Trump side is, any notion that national security is at risk here. So 2 starkly different views, Morgan, of this case.
But Ken, let's talk about the elephant in the room here, the who. I mean, each side is set to respond with the other's proposed candidates for this role. But who are these candidates? Because there has been so much back and forth about the nature of the role. I mean, what about the role itself? What are the parameters that a special master must actually fall within and operate within?
Well, to be honest, Morgan, it's not that exciting. These are 3 of the 4 are retired federal judges. Some have experience on the FISA court. That's the secret surveillance court. So they have had security clearances in the past. One of them, Barbara Jones, was the special master in searches involving Michael Cohen and Rudy Giuliani, 2 of Donald Trump's lawyers. So she has experience doing this. The only controversial name proposed there was Paul Huck, proposed by the Trump side. He is not a retired federal judge, but he is married to a woman who was appointed by Donald Trump to the appeals court that would rule in this case. So a lot of legal experts are concerned that he may have a conflict of interest, Morgan.
Speaking of that, though, Ken, the judge in this particular case has already been the subject of threats. Can you give us some details on that? What exactly is going on there?
Yeah, we learned today, Morgan, that a woman was arrested in Texas last week and charged with 2 counts of making criminal threats after she left voicemails and emails essentially threatening to kill this judge. It's important to note, though, that this woman apparently has a history of making threats, including threats to kill Donald Trump, we're told, and that her mother has told the Secret Service, this is according to court records now, that she has a history of mental problems. So, unfortunately, these things happen, but we're paying such close attention to this case that it's making the news. But I don't think much to worry about here, Morgan.
Thanks for the details. NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delaney joining us from Washington, D.C. Ken, thank you.
You bet.
In an exclusive interview on Sunday's Meet the Press with Chuck Todd, Vice President Kamala Harris was asked whether she thinks the Justice Department should prosecute former President Donald Trump. Here's what she told Chuck.
How much should former President Trump's status as a former president and a potential 2024 candidate, how much should that factor into the decision to charge him?
Well, I wouldn't dare tell the Department of Justice what to do. As a former prosecutor, I will tell you, I am not in the business of telling a prosecutor what to do with their case, because they know best the facts and the evidence as applied to the law. And so I'm not going to tell them what to do. And certainly the President and I and our administration, unlike the previous administration, have been very, very careful to make sure that there is no question about any kind of interference in terms of the decisions that the Department of Justice makes.
All right.
In that regard.
But let me try to go to 60,000 feet. What do you say to the argument that it would be too divisive for the country to prosecute a former president?
I think that our country is a country that has gone through different periods of time where the unthinkable has happened, and where there has been a call for justice, and justice has been served. And I think that's potentially going to always be the case in our country, that people are going to demand justice, and they rightly do.
Well, 1 in 4 American adults are living with a disability, and their future is a key concern. Up next, the ways to afford care. An important story you'll want to see. You're watching NBC News Daily. And welcome back on a Monday. I'm Vicky Nguyen.
I'm Morgan Bradford. Thanks for joining us. We're bringing you the making news right now. The first of many funeral services are being held in honor of Queen Elizabeth. The Queen's coffin led a procession earlier from a royal residence to St. Giles Cathedral in Scotland. King Charles III, along with his siblings, walked behind their mother's coffin as it made its way to the church.
Over 50 people rescued in California after mudslides trapped them in their vehicles, parts of Hurricane K causing the mudslide Sunday evening. Some people had to be rescued by LA County Fire Department helicopters.
And Venezuela defending its detaining of a U.S. Marine veteran and other U.S. citizens. The country's government saying it will continue to enforce its laws, but reiterated, quote, spaces and channels are open to the U.S. to search for an understanding on issues. Now, that statement comes after the State Department urged President Maduro for the release of U.S. citizens who were wrongfully detained.
Bringing it back home now, voters in New Hampshire are getting ready to head to the polls tomorrow with high-stakes primary matchups taking center stage.
That's right. We are tracking the heated and, frankly, very expensive GOP races in the Granite State. The contest will tee up competitive November matchups for the House and the Senate that could really determine party control in Washington. NBC News correspondent Dasha Burns joins us now from Londonderry, New Hampshire. Dasha, first, if you can, just walk us through the Republican House primary. What are you hearing on the ground from the candidates, and especially from the voters? What are they telling you is important to them in this final stretch?
Yep, Morgan, Vicky, these are two really important races here, both the House race and the Senate race. In the House race here, you've got a vulnerable Democratic incumbent, and whoever runs against them in November is going to be in a tight matchup here. In this race, you've got a bit of a Trump proxy war. You've got two young candidates who are both working to carry the MAGA mantle into November. You've got Matt Mowers, who's 33, Caroline Leavitt, who's just 25 years old. She was here at a local business earlier today speaking to voters. She's trying to bring home the message that inflation is hurting voters, that she's the person who can make some change in Washington. And take a listen to what she told me.
Our party is lacking youthful representation, and that's reflected in where my generation is voting, right? Generation Z millennial voters are the most influential voting bloc in America today, and unfortunately, they're voting overwhelmingly for Democrats. We need to change that as a conservative movement in an America First Republican Party, and that's why I set forth on this path to run for Congress.
Notably, the former president, Trump, has not endorsed in this race, though both of these candidates very much looking to campaign sort of in his image, in his style, particularly Leavitt. What's going to be interesting to watch here, though, is what happens between the primary and the general, where you've got 38% of New Hampshire voters who are unaffiliated. So while these candidates may do well with the Republican base here, how they pivot in the general election to attract some of those more moderate voters could be a challenge for these candidates. Morgan, Vicky?
Dasha, what about the Senate GOP primary there in New Hampshire? Who are the candidates to watch, and what are their key differences?
This is a critical seat, guys, that really could have been a fairly easy pickup for the Republican Party, or at least an extremely competitive race. What we're seeing here, though, is sort of what we've seen in a few different races. We've got a moderate candidate versus a further right candidate. Don Baldock, we actually just spoke with him. He is leading in the polls right now, but the Republican establishment has lined up behind his opponent, who is sort of holding that more traditional Republican mantle. And we're going to see which one of those candidates is able to appeal to these New Hampshire voters who are independent and idiosyncratic here, guys.
We'll be watching. NBC News correspondent Dasha Burns. Thank you, Dasha.
Well, Vicky, speaking of politics, President Biden is in Boston today delivering an update on his cancer moonshot initiative. Now, this speech falls on the 60th anniversary of President John F. Kennedy's moonshot speech, where he outlined his goal to put a man on the moon. NBC News senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell joins us now from the White House with all the latest details. Kelly, we know that cancer is a particularly personal cause for the president after his son Beau's passing back in 2015. What do we expect him to say when he speaks to the entire country this afternoon?
Well, I would imagine the president would reference his own life experience, and he often does that. I've been on many different events where he has referenced Beau's health experience, what he learned about having to navigate the healthcare system, and then to broaden it out and to say that the cancer moonshot is something that President Biden wants to be part of his legacy. How to bring about and harness medical innovation, how to bring about a greater sharing of what is known in the federal government, and how to target money to research to bring about answers more quickly. And that's part of what the cancer moonshot is. So today, using that historical anniversary of President Kennedy's moonshot, referring to getting the U.S. to the moon, and now putting it in the cancer sphere to say, can the U.S. move more quickly to get answers that could help treat cancers? And so part of what they're doing is grants that will help to provide researchers with tools, biomedical technology to try to advance new cures, and to try to bring all of that about across the bureaucracy to make it work faster and better from the lab to the patient's bedside. Morgan?
All right, NBC News senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell for us there. Kelly, as always, thank you so much.
For family members living with a disability, planning for their financial future is often a key concern. More than 61 million Americans live with special needs. Sit there with that for a moment. Their care can be really costly. CNBC senior personal finance correspondent Sharon Epperson joins us now with one family's journey helping their disabled son and others through music. This is such an important story to spotlight. Sharon?
Absolutely, Vicki. You know, I learned firsthand how critical it is to have a financial plan when you're faced with an unexpected disability after I suffered a ruptured brain aneurysm 6 years ago. And it was such a pleasure to meet this fellow survivor and share his story.
Hey, wait.
Just reach out your hand.
Daniel Trush was just 12 years old when a brain aneurysm rupture changed the course of his life.
I went into a coma, and I was in a coma for 30 days, and I was in the hospital and rehab for a total of 341 days. But who's counting, am I right?
He's now 38 and the president of Daniel's Music Foundation, a New York-based nonprofit that provides free music programs for people with disabilities. His parents are in their 60s and help Daniel reach his goals by planning for his financial security.
I'm used to business plans, and so I converted a business plan to a personal plan. And it goes down to the plan, okay? This is what we have coming in. This is what we want to do. Where's the surplus? How much do we have to save?
Experts say accessing government and employer benefits and setting up targeted savings are critical to secure a disabled person's financial future. If they inherit a traditional or Roth IRA or 401k, they can stretch distributions over their lifetime instead of having to withdraw the money within 10 years like most beneficiaries. An ABLE account lets families save up to $16,000 a year without impacting government benefits for someone who became disabled before age 26. And it's also important to find a community of support.
So when people come here, they come here for the joy of music, but they also come here knowing that there are other people that are going through what they're going through, not just emotionally or physically, but financially.
But we find that a lot of the parents, caregivers come together because there's a commonality. They feel comfortable. Sometimes outside, people do not understand what they're going through.
Not just in creating a financial plan, but also a life plan for people with disabilities to be able to share their special talents.
We judge our success by the number of smiles that we get.
And this unexpected executive is almost always smiling.
When they see me, they might not think that I could do much, but then when I show them what I could do, their minds are blown.
You know, it's fascinating to see this story and to see Daniel's journey. So many people with disabilities never make it, and he is an unexpected survivor. 1 in 50 people has a brain aneurysm, and nearly half of those never make it. So the fact that he is doing this is remarkable. If you want to know more about brain aneurysms, September is Brain Aneurysm Awareness Month. I urge you to go to bafound.org, the Brain Aneurysm Foundation. That is one of the places where you can find a lot of great information, but also a community of support, which, Vicky and Morgan, is so very important when you're talking about trying to figure out how to make a plan for your loved one with disabilities, whether it's a financial plan or their life plan.
Sharon, we are so happy you shared that story with us and that you're here with us today as well. CNBC Senior Personal Finance Correspondent Sharon Epperson, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, yesterday marked 21 years since the worst attack on American soil since Pearl Harbor.
It's hard to believe it's already been 21 years. To honor those lost on September 11, 2001, friends and family members, they gathered for touching ceremonies to remember the lives lost on that painful day. NBC News correspondent Rahema Ellis has more.
On this day of remembrance, somber moments of silence. Emotional tributes at Ground Zero have become tradition.
Asia S. Adam.
Maria, I don't know when this weight in my chest is gonna go away, but it's gonna be there, I guess, until they lay me down beside you.
Uncle Jimmy, I'm so proud to be named after you. You're my hero.
Nino, one thing I'm sure, I was there from day one looking for you. From the first hour I received a phone call. Thanks to you, looking over me.
Vice President Harris joined families remembering those lost in the terrorist attacks when 2 planes struck the Twin Towers at the World Trade Center in New York City on 9/11.
We'll never forget.
At the Pentagon, President Biden vowing to always defend the nation from terrorists and remembering Queen Elizabeth, who stood with America on the day of the attacks.
He poignantly reminded us, quote, grief is the price we pay for love.
In
In Shanksville, Pennsylvania, the First Lady joined others in the open field, remembering those heroes who stormed the cockpit of United Flight 93.
This is the legacy we must carry forward. Hope that defies hate. Love that defies loss. And the ties that hold us together.
In Roseville, California, firefighters paying their respects. Tributes also played out at football stadiums.
21 years ago.
And at the U.S. Open.
Please join us in a moment of silence.
Back at Ground Zero,
never forget.
Gordon Huey's sister, Susan, died in the North Tower. He still vividly remembers the day he lost his best friend.
We were like two peas in a pod. We were so close. She was my best friend, my confidant, so I miss her a lot.
Our thanks to NBC News correspondent Rahim Ellis for that report.
Well, he's already being called the GOAT, a.k.a. the greatest of all time. But at 45 years old, with 7 Super Bowl rings in his collection, how much more can Tom Brady prove on the football?
How much?
It's a good question. With that, we're going to answer it right after the break. You're watching NBC News Daily. All right, so over the weekend, the NFL kicked off with a bang, and like many, many years in the past, the 7-time Super Bowl championship quarterback Tom Brady once again led his team to victory.
But now some insiders are speculating the 45-year-old gridiron legend could be hanging it up after this season. Here's NBC News correspondent Gadi Schwartz.
MVP. It was just last year that Tom Brady won the Super Bowl. Just last season, he made it to the playoffs again. And just last February, famously retiring for good for a grand old 40 days before unretiring himself and suiting up once more, all while facing questions over whether this season will be his last.
I think we're all getting one day older at a time, so, we're all not sure whether we're going to be here next year or not. If this is a reality for every player, every coach.
Does Tom Brady have anything left to prove?
No, and he could have said that like several years ago. None of the normal rules apply. Brady hasn't missed a game with injury since 2008. Think about that 45-year-old arm, led the NFL in passing yards, led the NFL in passing touchdowns last year.
But with so many wins, there is no normal playbook. Last month, Brady, with an excused absence for 11 days from practice, reportedly spending time with his family.
45 years old, man. There's a lot going on.
And while tabloids are lining up the offense with rumors of his supermodel wife Giselle unhappy with his unretirement, Brady is back with his signature bravado.
Elbow pain? That.
And not leaving much to the imagination for those who question his fitness at age 45. And whether he retires this year or not, a more than $300 million broadcast deal allegedly awaits him on the other side. But for now, saying his arm is a terrible thing to waste.
And so moral of this weekend story, speculating on anything Tom Brady does other than win is kind of a quick way to find yourself getting a whole bunch of told you so's from Brady fans, something that anyone doesn't have him on their fantasy roster learns very quickly. Trust me, guys, I had to learn the hard way.
Oh, you're a fantasy guy?
Yeah, not looking good so far.
All right, NBC News correspondent Gadi Schwartz. Gadi, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Sure.
And we're going to stay with the NFL. Do you ever wonder what it takes to get your favorite team to a distant game for an away game? Well, the short answer is it takes a lot. NBC's Craig Melvin went behind the scenes with the Buffalo Bills to see what it takes to get ready for kickoff.
Equipment staff unloading about 15,000 pounds of gear they shipped from Buffalo. That gear includes about 100 helmets, 100 pairs of shoulder pads, 200 pairs of cleats, and 700 pairs of receiver gloves. The man in charge of it all, Jeff Mazurek.
I read that you started as a bowl boy.
Correct, in training camp, yeah.
15 years old.
Yeah, so this is all...
We dropped in on Jeff and his staff in Buffalo as they got ready for the preseason game in North Carolina. Equipment manager Spencer Halls keeps tabs on everything that makes it on the trucks or planes to an away game.
And you checklist everything, so everything that goes on the truck?
Everything that goes on the truck, everything we do, that's kind of my job. Jeff calls me Captain Clipboard, yeah.
Captain Clipboard, I like that. The staff knows where every piece of equipment is. One of the most important jobs is prepping the football for all-pro quarterback Josh Allen. The team gets about 500 balls a year, and it's the job of Austin Scoble to work each one into shape.
Josh doesn't like to use it straight out of the bag. It needs to be broken down, broken in with brush, mud, and all that stuff.
Mud?
Yeah, mud.
Why do we use mud?
It just helps break down the leather and make it more grippy.
Austin teaches me how it's done. First, you brush off the top coating on the leather. Then, you rub the mud into it and let the ball sit for 24 hours.
Wow. So that's 24 hours of waiting.
Then, you rub that off. Austin does this for between 300 and 500 balls every season. The end result?
So this is like a potential game ball.
Correct. Yeah. It's ready for Josh to see if he likes it or not and see if he wants to use it in the game.
Hey y'all, here is what is trending right now. Glee fans who are hoping to see Lea Michele on Broadway, well, you're gonna have to wait just a little bit longer. The Funny Girl actress tested positive for COVID-19. She is slated to return to the show September 20th.
Meanwhile, Harry Styles is back in the news, but the time winning an award at the Toronto International Film Festival. Now, Styles, along with the cast for My Policeman, is winning the Ensemble Award on Sunday.
And a reunion almost 4 decades in the making. You can see the adorable picture of Harrison Ford with his 1984 castmate Ke-Huy Quan. He played Short Round in the Indiana Jones series, you may remember. Ford will reprise his role as the archaeology professor for the final time next year. We don't know yet whether Short Round will join him. Hope so.
Well, fans who've been keeping up with the Kardashians, well, they may remember Kourtney Kardashian Barker has been there for 15 years at the premiere of her family's hit reality show.
Yeah, we have all watched her grow and do it all as a mom, a businesswoman. Her latest role is wife to Travis Barker. Today's Hoda Kotb sat down with her to talk all things Kourtney. Take a listen.
Kourtney Kardashian Barker. So was taking his last name a given? Were you positive that was going to happen, or did you think about that for a while?
It was a given. Yeah, it was just a given. It wasn't a thought.
You just knew.
And I didn't, so now my middle name is Kardashian.
Yeah.
So it's not, yeah.
How is married life? I mean, you guys are clearly in love. I mean, is it when you know, you know?
I think when it's kind of easy and like it just everything almost, yeah, like it's so weird. I think of like times when it thinks so easy and it's just like when it's right, it's right.
Favorite tattoo of his?
The Kourtney, of course.
Kourtney is the best
He
one.
also has my lips.
What?
And I did my own tattoo. I tattooed him. I wrote "I love you" in cursive, like in my cursive writing.
Script? And
then no, I did it.
Right.
I put it on.
Oh my
like
gosh.
I did the gun and did it.
And then he must really trust you.
And then I practiced and did like a K with a heart. So there's a few.
Oh, how sweet is that? You know, I've known you for a long time.
Yes.
In fact, we co-hosted together many years ago when we had you and your sisters each had a different day.
Yeah.
But through all the time, oh my God, wait. That was you then?
That was,
Holy 2011. Your sisters have had product lines and businesses, but I feel like that wasn't your thing until now. What's different now?
I feel like when I look at old episodes or anything, how they would like try to push me and be like, what's your thing?
What's
Come
your
on,
thing?
what's your thing? And I was like, why do I have to have a thing? Can't I be a mom and I'm filming the show? And it's like that's a full-time job.
Gig.
So I felt like until something, just like how I said, timing is everything. It's like with my husband, it's like this just also, to me, timing was everything. And it just was like, when it feels easy and it felt right. I've been going through this roller coaster for like 5 years, and knowing what it always was, I knew it was vitamins and supplements.
Yes.
It just was finding the right partners that had the same beliefs as me as far as sustainability, as far as ingredients. And once it happened, it's been like fun. I've been super decisive. I think when I'm also in like a place where I feel really confident, so I think that helps with all the decision making. Yeah.
I like that you're in that moment in your life. So you
Thank you
feel comfortable in your own skin. Do you feel like it's kind of finally I'm here?
Yeah, I do. I do feel that way. And I feel like it's all like working together and just with ease.
I think you're in a great moment in your life. It sounds like you found like the love of your life. You've got your next season of the show. You've got this product line, and you look. I remember you from years ago. You look happier now than you did back then.
Thank you. I think I am.
All right, well, speaking of Hollywood, Hollywood is preparing for a very big night, the 74th Emmy Awards tonight on NBC and Peacock.
Saturday Night Live's Kenan Thompson will be hosting The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Succession, Ted Lasso, 3 of the top shows vying for top honors. Newcomers Abbott Elementary and Severance, as well as Squid Game, hoping to edge out some of the past winners. The Primetime Emmy Awards are live tonight at 8 o'clock Eastern. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Vicky Nguyen.
It's been our pleasure. I'm Morgan Bradford. You're watching NBC News Daily.